Well, welcome back to the couch. I'm Dez.
And I'm Jay.
And this is our Willow review. Coming up next.
Willow is a 1988 high fantasy film directed by Ron Howard from a story by George Lucas. It stars Warwick Davis, Val Kilmer, Joanne Whalley, Jean Marsh, and Patricia Hayes.
Willow, a simple farmer, reluctantly becomes the leader of a band of travelers who must protect an infant princess from the clutches of the evil Queen Babmorda, or the world will be lost. Okay, so this is like the 30th, almost 31st year anniversary of this film's original release back in 1988. For me, it's the very first time I've ever seen this film, and you mentioned it's been quite a while since you rewatched it.
Yeah. So this was your very first time,
My very first time.
Really cool going into this, and I didn't know what you're going to think.
So tell me, what was the first thing that jumped out at you when you rewatched this film?
Well, right away, like the first couple frames are the music. We got James Horner, scoring this thing. It's beautiful music right in the first couple seconds. And then it just kind of, for me, just floods me with nostalgia immediately. Not just for the film itself, but for the time period. We're talking about, this to me is the golden age of movies, or the 80s, just like the 60s are to music. Immediately I noticed, I'm in the 80s. We got title cards at the beginning, introducing you to the story. And then it's PG, and you're getting really dark themes for a quote-unquote kids movie. The very first opening scenes are the evil Queen Babmorda is gathering up pregnant women in the land, and they're in a dungeon, and they're all suffering and screaming and awful, and they're killing babies. And,
it doesn't start off happy.
And in my observation, that's not, you don't do that anymore. Not in a kids movie.
Exactly.
We grew up on these types of movies, whether you saw Willow specifically or not. We're all fine. We're fine. I think we're good.
Yeah, I think it worked out just fine.
So it's not afraid to be dark. It's not afraid to show skeletons. It's not afraid to show a midwife being mauled by two wolf beasts.
Right.
In a PG movie.
Basically orphaning a child right off the bat.
I admire that they
just being brave enough to do it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's very grim fairy tale in that regard. We don't get movies that are paced like this anymore. I think maybe a couple examples recently, maybe one that comes to mind is Blade Runner 2049, just took its time. But I'd like that to be more the norm again, instead of the, oh my gosh, they're going to take their time and tell the story,
Yeah, it shouldn't stand out as much.
Yeah, so I really, really liked that. It just gives me more time to soak it all in and be more engaged in it. So I'm coming at this from a place of nostalgia. So you're not, and that's very interesting to me. So what did you think going into this for the very first time now?
It's interesting that you bring up nostalgia, because I get about halfway through the film and I think to myself, well, I could see how this would resonate with me a lot more if I had that experience of growing up with this particular film. But it almost felt like there was a part missing for me, and I think it was that nostalgia that you had mentioned. Because I was enjoying what I was watching, I missed the boat. What you gonna do?
Our story evolves around this baby, Elora Danan.
Yeah.
Probably, I'm not afraid to say it, the cutest baby ever on film.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Every shot of that baby, the reaction shots, like, how did you get this baby to do that?
That's key to me, I think, because Willow was against even helping this kid in the beginning to sell his change of heart. You needed that reaction from that baby to be like, it's kind of that awe moment. It's like, how can you say no to a cute face like that? You definitely needed that particular reaction.
It amazed me. I don't know if it was Ron Howard himself or a second unit director, whoever got these shots of this baby's reactions, every single one, the baby is an actual character that you care about.
Right.
Looks like a daikini baby. Keep this fire high. We don't know what's out there. What was that?
Let me out of here. I'll take care of the baby.
The baby in this story is kind of the ring in the Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of similarities. I think it may be cyclical. And what I mean by that is the Lord of the Rings story has been around for, 100 plus years or whatever it's been. And when you're watching Willow, to me, there's definite parallels. You've got, like, for example, Migosh, he sticks with his friend Willow. That's very Sam and Frodo. He doesn't stick with him the whole journey like Sam does with Frodo. But there's that, and then there's the brownie, the goddess that shows up in the forest.
Oh yeah,
And,
yeah.
and you know, the brownies have captured Willow, and she tells him, no, let him go. He's got this mission to fulfill. And that's very much like the Elven Queen in The Lord of the Rings, even looks very much the same. It's almost the same exact thing. I was watching it going, I think Peter Jackson grew up on Willow, or at least is very aware of Willow, because I think Lord of the Rings inspired Willow, and then Willow, the film, in turn inspired the Lord of the Rings films, the way they look. There's just some beautiful shots, location shots and things. This really is kind of like, instead of Fellowship of the Ring, it's kind of Fellowship of the Baby. So we get a few little people, which are kind of our Hobbit stand-ins, the Nelwyn. So Willow is a Nelwyn,
right.
and Migosh and a couple other ones go with them at first, and then it ends up just being Willow and Val Kilmer as Mad Mardigan, who was great in this.
Yes.
What'd you think of Val Kilmer in this?
The young Val Kilmer was awesome, man. It was great to see him in his prime, you know, not wearing a Batman suit.
Yeah, he's good in this, and he's funny. And there's moments of humor throughout this film that I really like, actually, and he is part of it. So he's very gruff and rough around the edges when they find him. I mean, he's in this cage to die, and his teeth are all disgusting and all. I mean, they did a good job on that.
There's some nice humor in there, two of them trying to get the water.
Say, can I have some of that water? I don't know why I tried. I guess I am gonna die here. Who cares?
Here.
Thanks, friend.
Oh. See this acorn? I'll throw it at you and turn you to stone.
Ooh. I'm really scared. No, don't! Don't! There's a peck here with an acorn pointed at me!
Everything with the cage is good, but you get that it's not a joke at the same time.
Right,
So that's,
right.
I mean, they blend everything very well in this movie. You start out in a dark place, there's a guy in a cage with a bunch of dead bodies and stuff, and then by the end, we're joking about water and stuff, and it's fine. It
Right.
doesn't take you out of it. And the film definitely does have other moments of humor. I mean, one of my favorite little moments, it's very quick, but it's when Willow and company are about to embark on this mission, and they haven't even met Mad Mardigan yet, but they're just leaving the town, and the one and only Billy Barty, I mean, how cool is Billy Barty? He's kind of the High Alden, I think it's called, the High Council. He's basically the
head sorcerer.
of this village.
He's Doctor Strange in this film.
Right. So he's the head of this council in this village, and so he's seeing them off.
Tuatha. Lokothrak. Tuatha. Go in the direction the bird is flying.
It's going back to the village!
Ignore the bird. Follow the river.
But there's moments, maybe a good dozen of them, that are just quick like that throughout the whole film.
Yeah, and it's good you mentioned that. It kind of reminds you that, once again, this is a kid's film.
Yeah.
It kind of brings you right back to that place, you know what I mean?
Yeah, at the very least, it's meant for a general audience, and so
Right.
anybody, it's very accessible. Anybody can just go, oh, I want to go on this adventure with these people. This is cool.
This is where the audio got biffed. We apologize.
Jean Marsh as the evil Queen Bavmorda. Was she not born to play these type of roles? I
Yeah.
mean, that's not an insult of any kind either. I mean, she is great in these type of roles. She played Mombi in Return to Oz a couple years prior to this, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And that's another dark kids movie. Very
Yeah, that's a
scary.
good point. It
But
really
she
is. It scared the
really-
crap out of me as a kid.
Still is scary. Return to Oz. Yeah, she's great playing these sorceress, witch, evil queen type roles. Even though we don't get that much of her in the film, really, but anytime she's on screen, it's like, what's going to happen
she
next?
owns it,
Yeah,
yeah.
she good way to put it. She owns it.
I enjoy Queen Bavmorda, but it reminds me of a point that kind of made my antennas go up a little bit in this film. Her daughter, Sorsha, she comes across as like her number one lieutenant or warrior or whatever. She's like her go to. You know, I need something to get done. That's who gets it done for me. That was who Saoirse was to me in this film. So I couldn't help but wonder to myself what motivated Saoirse to just completely disobey her mother or just go against her. I mean, because we basically start off with her arguing with her mother over who's going to go along, because her mother wanted to send someone else with her to go and capture Elora, and she was like, no, I don't need him, I can go by myself, I got this, forget this dude, that's an insult. I don't need this dude.
Wannabe Skeletor guy.
The wannabe Skeletor
Kale,
guy.
I think his name was. I hate
Kale. So.
Wannabe Skeletor. Yeah, we have kind of a evil Lynn Skeletor flip-flop going on here.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. But anyway.
So we went from her arguing with her mother over bringing this Kale dude with her to now all of a sudden we're in the third act and she's just completely turning an about face and just disobeying her mother. And it was a gradual and slow enough turn to where it's acceptable, but we still don't know what the ultimate motivation was.
It would have been nice, and maybe this was in the film and cut or something, but I'm fine with her reasoning, at least in part, for switching is because she's fallen in love with someone on the opposing side of this conflict. That's fine. That happens. You know?
But that can't be the only reason.
But it can't be the only reason. Yeah, I would have liked something. We needed at least a scene or something that showed there's a reason she realizes her mother is wrong. This baby needs to be saved. There needed to be some kind of revelation moment.
Right.
For it to feel like more earned.
That coupled with the potential romance with Mad Mardigan would have made perfect sense.
Yeah, because the romance is fine.
Yeah.
I actually like the romance. It adds. In fact, part of this movie I really like is it is so well balanced. You got a little humor, you got a little romance. It's a classic adventure tale, and you've got little pieces of everything that you need to make that
action in there too, a little bit.
And everything you would need to make a recipe for a great fun adventure film is in there. So that's part of it for sure. At least what we got isn't done poorly. It's done well, so you buy it.
You touched on something really great here. As far as it had all the ingredients to make it a great ride to go on. It has the adventure, it has a little bit of romance, has a little bit of humor. The action, that was a little cheesy. Some of the fight scenes were just a little cheesy to me even for an 80s movie. It's like there was too much pirouetting and swimming and dancing with a sword like a ballerina from Mad Mardigan, and just kind of, it's obviously a 30-year-old movie, so I mean, you gotta forgive it somewhat, but
I think that was part of its style. I don't know if I like it or dislike it. It just is. I mean, we have a Ron Howard who, while he was becoming the Ron Howard we know, he's still a pretty young director at this point. I'm not sure how much action Ron Howard's actually directed, especially before Willow. So I think part of it might have to do with, he's kind of a novice at action directing, but I could be wrong. That's just my perception.
You could be right too. Another thing that I thought was a little cheesy in there, even for an 80s film, was turning everyone into a pig.
To me, that's very grim fairy tale, turning them into pigs. It's dark and weird and strange and scary and kind of...
That's exactly what I don't like about it, so you're okay with it.
Yeah, because it really did hit me this time how much I loved the whole fairy tale aspect of this film, especially the more traditional fairy tales, the darker stuff where people are dying. There's the morals aren't always necessarily fun morals, things like that. While as today, most if not all of these type of fairy tale stories are sanitized.
Which makes the adventure more rewarding is having to go through stuff.
You need a moment or two where you're like, oh yikes, I don't like that.
Exactly, yeah. But you got to go through it. Or to have that ultimate euphoric sensation that you feel after you've gone on that journey. That sense of satisfaction, I guess.
Satisfaction's good. It needs to be earned.
Right.
Yeah, it does. And so
you can't earn it without going through that.
You can't just have everything's good without knowing what the bad is and vice versa. You have to have that contrast. I really love how this just goes, hey, we're a grim fairy tale on celluloid, and too bad. I hope you like it. It's telling the story it wants to tell.
Right.
Without
and I respect that, but I'm just gonna have to forgive that whole pig thing because I still don't care for it.
No, it's not like it's not one of my favorite scenes or anything. It's well done, but it's not like I'm like, oh, I can't wait for the turning into pig scene. It's kind of frightening.
It's kind of cringy to me. It's like, oh no, they're really turning them into pigs right now. No, don't do it. You don't have to.
They did a lot with very little as far as sets and characters, having to have people on set to play characters. You're not going into any major cities. There's no major things like that. They took a couple sets and they were able to tell what feels like a big story with very little. They make you feel like there is this big, amazing, magical world out there. You're just not getting to see all of it, but it does exist. So I thought they did a really good job with that. We talked about Bavmorda a little bit, and then the baby in the beginning of our story. So this leads us, of course, into Willow. So the midwife has put the baby downstream, and that leads us to the Nelwyn village, where Willow's 2 children find this daikini, aka human baby. And so Willow's very reluctant to take the baby. He wants to just push it downstream and ignore it. But his wife and kids convince him otherwise. And he is studying to be a sorcerer's apprentice. Each year in the village, Billy Barty goes to select an apprentice, and he hasn't in like a couple decades or whatever it's been. So Willow's hoping this is his year. And we open up with a festival, and I am not ashamed to admit that I absolutely love the music during this festival when they're dancing around and all that stuff. It's great. So we're going to play a clip right now. We have Warwick Davis playing the main title character, Willow. It's top billed with Val Kilmer, so you'd expect Val Kilmer to be kind of the main star of the film, and he's kind of not.
Not really.
Yeah, and so
He's almost second or third.
Yeah, you got Warwick Davis leading the whole show, and he's great in it,
Yeah,
I
he
thought.
is.
And then Matt Mardigan himself, speaking of Val Kilmer, I thought this was one of his best roles. I'm not saying like this was his greatest performance or whatever. He was good in it though.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as it's just fun.
And I really would have loved to get a little bit of backstory on what led him to being in that cage in the first place, and also some of his relationship with I believe his name was Eric.
Eric, I believe,
seemed
yeah.
like a frenemy type of relationship, but you're not 100% sure.
Yeah, there's a history there.
Yeah, I kind of would like to touch on that history a little bit.
This film does a good job at that, actually, I think. Because, yeah, you do want to know, hey, what's that all? I want to see a movie about that. And I'm really not a prequel guy as far as the principle of prequels. I feel like if it's backstory, it's backstory for a reason. So generally speaking, prequels aren't really my thing. But I would make an exception here, and not just for the Mad Mardigan story, but I would really like to see, like, Rizal versus Bavmorda, like, the younger years. Because they give you so much setup, like, something happened between these 2 women that was major. One of them ended up turning one of them into an animal for presumably the rest of her life.
How did that happen?
There's a story there that actually makes me want to see that movie.
You hear that, Peter Jackson? Get on that.
Someone make Rizal versus Bavmorda.
Yeah.
There we go. What about the brownies?
The brownies were awesome, man. There's Kevin Pollak sighting in there.
Yeah, Kevin Pollak, he was the best one.
Oh yeah, he was definitely the standout.
What'd you think of the, he's wearing that rat's or mouse head the whole time, and at the end we get that little thing that he's
Yeah, it
bald.
was like our long lost brother.
Him and Burglecut.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, maybe we add a couple bald guys, have them guest on the show, have Burglecut come sit on the couch with us.
Well, he can sit on your lap and not mine. How about that?
Yeah, I don't know if our couch is quite big enough for Burglecut. Sorry, Burglecut. So, more funny moments in the movie here with the brownies. I'm not saying I laughed out loud every single time they were on screen, but they at least were humorous. Every time they were on screen, it was like, okay, I'm having fun. Actually makes me think of a couple other funny things that I really liked, a couple other scenes that I really liked. For example, when Val Kilmer gets like the love dust put on him accidentally, right? And he realizes those feelings for Sorsha. He hates Sorsha. Really, it's more Matt Morgan's kind of like a little kid now. Yeah, because he's gonna go chase after Sorsha, say he hates her, pull her hair, or whatever. That's how he's gonna express that he likes her. And then that leads me right into another one of my favorite little quick funny moments with Val Kilmer. Is when, so they're trying to get to Tyrus Lee. That's the place where they believe Laura Dan, the baby,
Yes.
she's destined to rule as their queen eventually. So she's the princess, they're trying to get her back there, well, she'll be safe. So Willow keeps talking about Tyrus Lee and how when they get there, everything's going to be fine. And then when they get there, they find that it's been abandoned. And there's this quick moment where Val Kilmer cuts in and says,
everything will be all right once we get to Tyrus Lee.
he's supposed to be our swashbuckling, sword-swinging hero, and here he is acting like that. I thought it was great.
One thing I noticed about this film was the effects. I mean, they still hold up over a 30-year time frame. I mean, they weren't necessarily the greatest effects ever, but you could tell for that particular time period that they were pretty good for that day. I mean, for a guy coming in 31 years late, it still held up and it never really took me out of the film.
I thought the same thing, so good to hear someone coming in new feels that way.
Except for the dragons. The dragons were just ugly.
Well, the dragons were ugly. I don't have a problem with the effects they were using for that time. It's just I don't understand the design. Even as a kid when I would watch this film, I never understood why did they design the dragons' faces that way. It just
was
weird and goofy.
Yeah.
Very goofy looking. And it should be more terrifying, I think, and it takes away from that. But the effects themselves, yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because there are so many special effects shots in this film, and this movie's over 2 hours long. And other than some of the lighting on the brownies, you can tell, the green screen work and stuff, the lighting's off. But really, if you can ignore that little bit of it, where they positioned the brownies in certain scenes and they had to line it up. There's one shot where Pollock's character, he falls down, but he hits a bell or something.
Yeah.
With 80s tech, putting that shot together must have been a nightmare. So lots of respect and admiration for this.
Yeah, tip of the cap.
Overall, the performances are pretty good. When there was one scene in particular that I really thought Warwick Davis was great, it's right towards the end where they actually take the baby. Willow comes out and he's just distraught because the baby's just been stolen.
Nora! Willow!
Nora's gone.
Willow.
Great performance in this scene. Like, this scene really stuck out. Like, you feel the heartbreak. And as we get to the end of the film with the fortress and everything, there is a shot I'd just like to point out. Very cool. You've got wannabe Skeletor, the Skeletor stand-in, and he's on his horse with the baby, and he's riding into Bad Morta's fortress, and you have the sun setting.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It stuck out. It's a very well-established shot. So, Des, did you notice this about this film? I realized this is the way you write strong characters. Because we have strong characters across the board, and everybody's got things to do. You got Sorsha leading the little band to actually face Bad Morta at the end, the showdown. And then you have Mad Mardigan and Eric in the front lines down at the bottom trying to defend the castle from the enemy armies realizing that Sorsha's gone up with her little band to try to stop Bad Morta. You don't have any of the characters sitting on the sidelines waiting for the hero or heroine to do their thing. Everybody's got a part to play. And I thought that was very well balanced and handled, and we were shown, not told.
Couldn't have said it better myself, my man.
All right. So during this final climactic battle, Willow has to take over, and he's got the baby. It's just Willow holding the baby versus the evil queen, Bad Morta. He saves the day by using the disappearing piglet trick that he did at the festival earlier. So I thought it was really cool how they tied something that seemed very trivial, maybe it's a character moment or something, and then later it's like, oh no, actually he ends up saving the entire world because he knows this disappearing piglet trick. He wins by wits. He doesn't win by brawn. He makes her think that something's happened to the baby just long enough to snap her out of her zeal, and then she loses because of that.
Nice touch.
Good ending.
Yes.
And then, as if by magic, all was right in the world again.
Once again, really sorry about that audio, guys, but I think we're back on track.
All right. So let's go ahead and sum up.
Willow is definitely a fun and enjoyable movie. It's George Lucas and Ron Howard in their story crafting primes. So it's great. I do think maybe Ron Howard lacked a little bit of expertise in the action sequences, perhaps. But overall, yeah, if you love fantasy, if you love 80s, if you love any of the actors in this film, if you just love good classic adventure tales, you're going to love Willow. So I definitely recommend you check it out, and I would give it 3.5 out of 5 shiny bald heads.
I missed the boat watching this film when it came out about 30 or so years ago. So because of that, I think my level of enjoyment is off just a tick, but not much. I don't think there's any major plot holes in this film. The CG is a little off, definitely a little dated, but hell, it's a 30-year-old film, so what do you expect, right? I'd definitely watch this film again if it came on late night TV. I'd be excited to watch it. I like Willow, but I don't love Willow necessarily. So because of that reason, I'm also going to have to give Willow 3.5 out of 5 shiny bald heads.
That was our Willow review. We really hope you enjoyed it.
So join us next time, right here on this couch.
Last time on the couch, we reviewed Justice League, so if you missed it, now's a great time to check it out. If you enjoy what we're doing, please hit that like button and subscribe to receive alerts when new videos are posted. Don't forget to hit the bell icon. Thanks, we really appreciate you.
I stole the baby from you, Daikini, while you were taking a pee-pee.